Well, I've been tossing out ideas in terms of who we could get, and I was like, let's get Russ, man. So let's hang out with him because uh, I'm gonna throw my guitar in the lake story came up the the
Okay,
other.
just a sec. I have to introduce though.
Okay.
Hey
Sorry,
everyone, Pat
we're,
Belliveau here again.
we're so keen.
My guest partner in crime and overall bad influence to my left, Greg Bush, for the next however many videos, we don't know yet. And our first guest, our first sacrificial lamb is Russ Broom on the bottom of the screen. All three of us go back a lot of years, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen Russ with Jann Arden, was her co-writer, guitarist, and multiple JUNO winner with her, and toured all over the world, I would imagine. Now is producing a lot and is involved with her TV show on CTV. So there's a lot of material we can draw on there. So now that the introductions are out of the way, okay, let's give her.
All right.
All right. Do you
All
want to
right.
start, Greg?
Well, yeah,
How'd you get started?
I'd already started and I was rudely interrupted by them.
Sorry, yes, I know, but I had to get in there and do all the house cleaning formality crap. So okay, we're good.
And then Pat was saying, he's like, yeah, what are we going to talk about? And I was like, well, we definitely have to talk about the Murray the Pilgrim tours.
Yes.
Oh man, was that the prison tour that we did?
That was the prison tour, man.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that
then,
was a weird one.
and then the bus ride was, and the games that the word association games that we played.
Right.
And you
Yes.
always managed to bring it back to serial killers.
And the Doobie Brothers.
And the Doobie Brothers. And then unbeknownst to you, you know, the rest of us, you know, we're sort of like moving away from the back of the bus, going to the front. And we're like, that cat Russ, he's dark, man. Serial killer.
Sorry about that.
So just to fill in everybody, because I have to. This would have been in the 90s, right? Probably early to mid 90s or late 80s.
Oh, late 80s.
Late 80s.
Yeah, I think I was 18 or 19.
Okay.
So
the three of us were hired to be in a band called Spirit Wind that did a tour of a lot of the prisons in the province of Alberta, maximum, medium, and minimum security. And we were on a bus just all over the province going to various institutions. And so that's kind of what we're reminiscing about now. So yes, so if you were 18, I probably would have been around 21 or 2, I guess, when that happened.
Yeah,
well, I'm happy to say I've only been back to prison once, and it was to play.
Good.
Yeah. So
that's good to hear.
My first prison gig, but not my last.
Well, I'm just out for the day, so.
Yeah. Greg's on a day pass, so.
Show us your ankle. We want to see the bracelet.
Can I push the zappy button?
Yeah.
Yeah, those were a lot of fun because the seems to me the pay was pretty dismal, but the hang was so much fun.
And sounds like the music business.
Exactly.
Imagine that.
There were some scary dudes at some of those prisons, man. Although, no, Pat and I did more than one. Did you only?
Yeah, I did more than one too.
You only do the one, Russ?
But Paul Rigby was on another one that we did, I think. Paul Rigby came along instead when because you weren't on it.
I gotta ask
Paul, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure it was him.
I remember the one where we were at the prison outside of Edmonton, and somebody said, "Was it Colin Thatcher, the premier?"
That's right. Yeah.
That's the one that was apparently he'd murdered his wife and he was incarcerated.
He was the old premier of Saskatchewan, and that was. I think that prison's called Fort Saskatchewan Prison, oddly enough, in Alberta, but something like that.
And was it medium or maximum?
No, that was max.
Yeah, Edmonton has a max too, but Fort Saskatchewan has another one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember we played Edmonton maximum. Yeah, we had all the hot spots. Yeah.
Ah, the good old day. That one day was great.
Yeah. And then the other thing I remember, it was when because it was a missionary thing, right? So they're going and they're trying to save souls and stuff. And I remember when it got to the point where, like, you know, if you want to accept Jesus and all that stuff, you know, put your hand up and all that business. And of course, the band, I was in the back and I'm looking around and there were some inmates that were thinking of putting their hand up. and there were some pretty scary looking inmates that were staring these guys down. And then first thing you know, the guys are like, the hand goes.
Oop.
Really?
And it was
Jeez.
like, well, don't mess with those guys.
Mhm.
Yeah, no kidding.
Wow.
Those guys are the ones who are the daddies.
I would think so.
Mhm.
I bet you.
Mhm.
So those were fun.
Crazy. So, what are we going to talk about? What do you guys been up to?
Well, I'll interject and say, just to lay some groundwork, I think I first met you when you played in the university jazz band here. And that
Yeah.
probably would have been like 87, maybe 88. Would that be
Yeah,
right? Does that
it was
sound
a
right?
blue band. 16. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. And that's the first time I ever knew who you were. So
Yeah.
that I
Do you
remember.
remember a sax player named Jeff Part?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Who has
Yeah.
been a band
So,
director.
yeah. So I used to teach guitar. I got this job teaching guitar when I was 14 at Studio 9 School of Music in Lake Bonavista. Vista.
Mhm.
And Jeff was one of the other teachers there. And he said, well, do you want to come, audition for the university band? And I was really into playing jazz then. And I was like, well, absolutely. And then that's how I got. So really, it's Jeff's fault that I got to meet all you guys and got to learn so much from that experience. I still think about all the things I should have done that I didn't. But it was great. Yeah.
Well, and funny enough, the other story that's actually come up a couple of times in the last probably 2 to 3 weeks is when you and I were doing that gig at Big Wally's in Kensington. Do you remember that? And I remember you said to me, we were like a couple of weeks into the run, and you said, I'm auditioning for Jann Arden's band. If I get it, I'm going to pass this gig on to you. And I think probably 4 or 5 days later, you called me up and said, I'm in Jann's band. The gig is yours. I remember that. I remember.
Yeah, that was a fun gig. I think we were called the Russ Broom Trio, and there were 4 of us.
Something like that, yeah.
Not that bright.
Yeah. I remember one night.
That was a great place to play.
It was. I remember one night Ravi Pillai came down. You remember Ravi?
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Totally 3 sheets to the wind, and just walks up and opens up his trumpet case and started to play and began to play whale sounds of some kind or something, I think, on a slow, funky Miles Davis type of tune or something like that. And I knew that
such a talented guy.
A little bit of my soul left my body that night, I think, and not in a good way. So, but yeah, the Big Wally's thing, I'm surprised because that was such a long time ago. Because you were with Jann for what, 16 years? Is that right?
Yeah, I was on the road with her for 15 years. So
okay.
I started in 94 and then I quit in about 2009.
Okay.
And then we didn't do anything for about, I guess, 10 years. And then a couple years ago, she called me up and said she was doing this TV series and would I be interested in doing the music? And I said, well, absolutely. And there was this artist from Australia named Emma Hewitt, who's more of an EDM artist. And her and I were working on some songs with her. And that's kind of how we sort of got our working relationship back together and stuff. And because we didn't really talk much over that 10 years, I'd been on the road with her for a long time. And I just felt like I was kind of pushing my luck being at a tour bus for that long. And it's not really a realistic way to grow up being in a bus and, having, like Greg said, security guards and all this kind of BS that is sort of a byproduct of doing that job. But so I just needed a change, I thought, I got to start doing something that's a bit more about my own personal growth and always contributing to everyone else's careers. So I made that choice. And then the nice thing has been kind of coming full circle with Jann after that 10 years apart. And, we've both grown a lot and changed a lot. And we've been writing a lot together. We're just going into another record, actually. Her and I and Bob Rock are producing it for her. And it's just been like a trip to start writing again. And one of the big blessings about this whole COVID experience that we're all going through is that Jann's been quite landlocked for the first time in like 25 or so years. And we've just had an opportunity to write a lot of music together. So it's been
cool.
It's been really quite fruitful and really enjoyable. And but I did that job for a long time. And when it started to feel like it was time for a change,
Right.
That's
cool. Yeah, anyway, I don't know how that Big Wally's thing has come up so much over the past 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever, but it has
It,
2 or 3
it's
times.
interesting. It's interesting, Pat, that he passed you the gig at Big Wally's rather than give you the gig with Jann Arden, and he stayed at Big Wally's.
Yeah, because Jann needed a sax player. I know that. I've said that for a long time.
Well, I may be dumb, but I ain't stupid. So.
Well, and I have to thank you for the one thing I did with her was that you called me to do the to lift the horn arrangement or whatever for Son of a Preacher Man on her Cover Me album, and was able to do the session. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for that. So
it was great. That was
I
one
did
of the,
get to do something. There you go.
Yeah, and that's one of the quickest and easiest horn section sessions I've ever done. So thank you for that.
Sure, absolutely. That was
fun.
That
was great. And that song did, I think, quite well on that record. Well, that record went platinum in 3 months, and then that song was a single and did quite well at radio. So nice work.
I got some checks from M-Rock that really that were really nice. That from that what is that? Musician Rights Organization of Canada. For royalties. It's
nice. Like a neighboring rights organization.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you earned every penny of it, man, because you played great. So.
Thanks. That was fun. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
Always. Greg, I'm sorry you couldn't be a part of that, but you were, at that point, I think you were in Texas. So we're talking about 2000, that was probably 2006 or 2007.
Yeah, I would have been in Texas then. I came to Nanaimo in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
If I wasn't in Texas, I was here.
Yeah, it was me playing tenor and Barry, and then Jim Murray on trumpet and Dave Reed on trombone.
Right.
That's who did the session. Yeah.
That's a great horn section. Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the last time I hung out with you, Russ, was at your house. We went out for, I guess, because it was early enough in the afternoon, we probably didn't have beers or something, maybe coffee. And then you took me back to your house to show me your setup was in your basement and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the last time we hung out.
Yeah, that was a while ago. That's over 10 years ago. It must have been.
At least 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, that's a divorce and a few houses ago. So.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't need to go there if you don't want to. So.
Been there, done that.
And for me, I think the last time that we were in the same room for any length of time was 2 years ago. You and I and Stefano were at Studio D and we recorded Girl Talk.
Right.
Which, by the way, is on my Spotify and Google Play and iTunes and all that. Just look me up. Just saying, let's make those nano payments happen.
Yeah. You'll be 100 air in no time.
There you go. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, that would have been about 2 years ago, I think, something like that. I'm going into the studio on Sunday, actually, to record another original. Not that Girl Talk wasn't original of mine, but, anyway. So
I remember when you sent me that Girl Talk track.
Yeah. That's Russ and Stefano on bass and Russ on guitar and me, no drums. So who needs a drum?
Yeah. Highly overrated. And you said you were just mixing some drums.
Yeah, well, I guess my kind of whole career has been about having a pretty diverse skill set, and all kind of fueled by the fact that I don't sing and I don't have the ego to be a front person. So with those two things sort of eliminated from my my ambition checklist, I've always really enjoyed being kind of more behind the scenes and being the guy that's not quite in the spotlight, but maybe just a corner of the spotlight's hitting my leg. So with that in mind, I really got into the production side of it because, the more I played guitar and was touring with Jann and working with her on her records and then doing a lot of other session work and TV and film session work, which I've always kind of done, it just felt like becoming a producer meant that I went from just playing the guitar to playing a whole band and treating a whole band like an instrument. And that's been such a really interesting and terrifying sort of job to undertake over the last, really, I've been focusing on it more over the last 10 years. And so really I tend to do a lot of different things. And right now, even during COVID, I've been lucky enough to be doing a lot of records. So I'm working with a guy named Art Bergman right now, who's sort of a punk rock legend. And then I've been writing with Jann, and we're knee deep in pre-production for her next record. So two quite opposite ends of the spectrum that, musically, that really draw pretty heavily from different skill sets I have. But ultimately, it's about, trying to facilitate an artist's vision and get the machete out and clear out the weeds and make sure that we're doing something that is honest and is truthful and is from the heart and from the right place that that person's writing their music from. And the joy in the last sort of portion of my career so far has just been learning how to do that. So it's a lot of, you know, how to interact with people, how to get the best out of people, and you know, how to contribute something that is complementary to the song, that not necessarily shines a spotlight on what I can do. And that sort of suits my ego needs, which are very minimal to a T. So
Is there a potential release time for that new album to come out?
with Jann?
Yeah. Or is it
Well,
too early in the
how
game now?
Yeah, you know, we're starting it in next month.
Oh, okay.
And really, I don't know, because, you know, everything sort of gets delayed with how the current pandemic is affecting the
Yeah,
industry,
course.
right?
Of course.
Because
Yeah.
Jann's TV show, season 2 just started airing in September, and initially it was supposed to air the weekend after the Junos back in March. So when all this happened, I was in Berlin with a bunch of TV and film composers from Canada for 2 weeks, came back, was flying through the Frankfurt airport on February 29th, and a lot of people were wearing masks, and it was starting to get a little more serious. So then I came home, and I was actually going to perform with Jann on the Junos this year because she was being put into the Hall of Fame. And I was really honored that she asked me to be a part of that after we, you know, spent so many years working together and doing records together and such. But it all got canceled, as everyone knows, and everything sort of got put into a holding pattern. And then because of that, Jann's TV show season 2 didn't debut in March and actually got pushed until just now in September. So it's really hard to say when things are going to be put out, but it looked like we're going to start working on it, and we're starting to send files all over the world because we're kind of doing a lot of it remotely, where Bob Rock, one of the other producers, is in Hawaii, and then Jann and I are here, and he has an engineer that lives in Calgary. So we all are just sort of figuring out how we're going to move forward and make it all work. But as you know, and you know how the industry is now, a lot of times you can do sessions from, you know, 200 square foot rooms in an old army barracks or your basement or whatever, as long as you have the right gear and you know what to send and how to do it. So it's, you know, I've sort of been preparing subconsciously for this pandemic over the last 10 years because I've been doing a lot of stuff just for people all over the world. And the fact that Pat and I live in Calgary, which is basically artistically a version of the moon, we don't get to be part of a bigger community that ultimately we want to be contributing to. So, you know, I do a lot of sessions for people in Los Angeles and Toronto and Vancouver, and I was doing a lot of work for some people in Vietnam over the last couple of years, and people in Nashville and stuff like that. And so, you know, kind of the modern way of making records seems to be somewhat pandemic proof, which is great. And it's enabled me to stay busy and keep everyone fed and keep my sanity to its relatively low degree that works for me and everyone around me. So,
well, recently too, I did a session. It was a 3-song kind of demo thing project with a band leader, saxophone player, composer, arranger, Matt Cattengoob. I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah, I know that name.
Yeah, Matt's in Las Vegas, and his mom, Mavis Rivers, was signed to Frank Sinatra's label, and he's doing a song based around songs that she did. He's ripped her vocal off of a recording from the 60s. He's writing all new arrangements around that, and he's singing duets with her and writing new stuff with her. And we did a big band. Did a big band all remotely. It was I know the sax section. There was one in LA, one in Orlando, one in Honolulu, and then me playing Barry here. And we sent all our files to him in Vegas to be mixed. And it's up on Sirius XM right now, the Seriously Sinatra channel. And they're going to do a full-length project to be released in the spring, apparently, based on that.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, what is it like being a section player without, you know, having a section around you to tune to and to phrase to?
Well, you know, he sent reference tracks that we play along with that were mixed so well and sounded so good. If they were MIDI, it would be difficult to, like, to the layman, you wouldn't be able to tell, because it was just what I had to play with, playing my part along with them, was so well done and sounded so good. I just cranked them up in the headphones. I did it at Steve's studio, Studio D. So I just cranked them in the headphones and just read it like, you know, the guys were around me. It was perfect. So it was, and then I've got another one for Jens Lindemann and him coming up right away, and then this other thing in the spring too. So I'm happy that there's still potentially ways to do things, even though we can't be in the same room at the same time, which to me is obviously ideal. I'm sure anybody else, but at least we're trying to be resourceful and make things work no matter what, just like what you're doing. So anyway,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, it's a lot of fun, even though I wish we were all together.
Yeah, I had a really weird job when this whole pandemic kind of started with Jason McCoy. He's a country singer.
Oh yeah, I
from
would
out
remember the
out of
Christmas at the Grand.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah,
I do. Yeah.
So Jason wrote a charity song called "We Are One," which is sort of a just trying to uplift everyone and kind of bring people together. And we had Ed Robertson from Bare Naked Ladies and Gordie Johnson from Big Sugar, and a guy named Greg Morrow, who's a drummer who plays with Amy Grant in Nashville. He's like a first call session guy, and just a whole bunch of like unbelievable players that everybody did everything remotely to the degree where I had to produce and mix the song. And I was getting vocal files from people that were recorded on their iPhones. And, you know, in the context of, you know, obviously it took a fair bit of work on my end to make it sound, you know, acceptable. But the fact that we could get those performances and get that energy just from people remotely was, it was a huge undertaking, but it was really, really cool. And I learned a lot. And it was nice to see that that you're still able to do these kind of things, you know, even a big sort of "We Are the World" kind of song like that. I mean, we had artists from Australia, from Africa, from Greece, from the UK, from all over the States and all over Canada contributing to it. And, you know, I'd wake up to an inbox filled from different time zones, right? But yeah, so it's possible to do kind of what we do. I'm finding the most difficult part is not getting the immediate feedback you get when you play a gig, or, you know, you play to an audience and you get to have that sort of cycle of energy where they're responding to you and you're responding to them, and everything sort of, you know, gets better, right? And it's been difficult to sort of lose that for so long. Even though I've done a couple of gigs, but they feel really odd to me, and I'm not very comfortable going out and playing, just because I don't want to be around, you know, people that are drinking a lot and then losing their inhibitions, and you know, I just want to keep my family safe and myself safe, because, you know, any of us that are self-employed, if we get COVID or have family members that do, and we have to shut everything down for a couple of weeks, that can be a pretty difficult and painful undertaking. So
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Greg, you're so quiet. This is
Well,
like
I'm just taking it all in. I'm getting caught up on what you've been doing for the last.
What about the Montreux story? Gotta tell that one. That has to be told before this is over.
yeah.
Bring it.
Was it? Well, I got to remember, because there were a couple. I remember we were playing in Montreux, because it's funny, but Greg had this band from Red Deer College, and
yeah.
you were incredibly kind, and you really kind of pulled me out of the ditch, because you had me go on this trip with the group, even though I wasn't a Red Deer College person, but it was right after my father passed away, and I was quite young. And it was one of those things that, even though I was in a pretty dark place, that you helped kind of lift me up by giving me something to work for and an opportunity. And I'm forever grateful. And I speak about it, that whole trip, in the greatest light. Even musically, it was great, but just more than that, the fact that you were so mindful of what I was going through and gave me an opportunity like that, I'm eternally grateful for. So it's nice to get a chance to thank you yet again for that.
My pleasure.
But that whole experience was incredible. And there's a couple of moments where I think there was guitars that were going to be thrown in lakes at some point. Now, I have one, when we were actually playing in Montreux outside, I remember I saw Borelli Legrand. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
He's like a gypsy jazz guitar player, but he's absolutely phenomenal. And I remember I looked at him and I made some gesture that, because we were playing right on Lake, I forget the lake that Montreux is on.
I think it's Lake Geneva.
Yeah.
Lake Geneva, okay. And I made some gesture that I should throw my guitar in the lake, because I was playing in front of him. And I remember he was like eating something, and he just looked at me and he went.
Nice.
But I think there might have been another "I'm going to throw my guitar in the lake" story, and I'm going to let Greg take that one.
Well, that was when, well, I remember it well, because and also I've had the opportunity to retell it a bunch of times too, so it helps to reinforce that. Well, we were playing Straight No Chaser. We were playing a blues, and I don't think it was in Montreux. I think it was at the hotel where we were playing for our room and board.
Okay.
We had the daytimes free to go sightseeing and stuff like that, and we went back for dinner, played our 2 sets or whatever it was, and we were playing Straight No Chaser, and the bass player started playing the melody behind your solo. And I don't remember if it was the end of the tune or the end of the set. You're like, how are you doing? And he's like, I don't know. It seemed like a good idea. And he's like, I wanted to throw my guitar in a lake.
It's funny. I seem to have blocked that out of my memory. And
Well, you're welcome.
yeah. Yeah, he was an interesting bass player. I think he got into radio after he stopped playing the bass.
I think you're right. Yeah, that was pretty funny. But yeah, that was a good time. The other thing I remember from that is we were trying to find some place to have dinner, and it was near the end of the trip, or what might even have been the last night. And we ended up driving around, and we were going up. Of course, my recollection could be a little bit skewed, but we were going up because it's all mountains. And we ended up at this hotel, and they let us in to the dinner, which was generally for the guests or whatever, the tour people that were there. We had dinner, and it was absolutely outstanding. And we were taking pictures of our dinner long before it was hip to take pictures of your dinner on Facebook. And I remember that. And I remember at the time, and still up in my top 5, I was like, this is probably the hippest me I've ever had in my life. Click.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember because we were in Italy and Switzerland on that tour, right?
Yeah.
I remember I went back with Jann and we were touring Italy because they used one of her songs in a jeans commercial over there. So she had a bit of a hit. And so we were playing a bunch of theaters in like Milan and Rome, and we played in Bologna. And I remember going into a restaurant there with Jann's manager and a couple other people. And I said to the waiter, do you guys have spaghetti with meat sauce? And he looked at me and he didn't even look me in the eye. He just said, we invented it. And I'm spaghetti bolognese. And I'm like, such an idiot. But I was much younger then.
Nice.
But the food, that's one thing about touring, right? Is when you have a great meal, you never forget it.
Especially Italy. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was just over there 2 years ago playing at the wine festival in Verona.
Mm-hmm.
And Vin Italy, it's called, with John DeWall and Sheldon Zanbor and myself and Stefano. And in Verona, I had the most exquisite plate of gnocchi in my life. It was like an out-of-body experience. Oh my God. Like to this, I don't take pictures of my food really very often. I had to there. It was just.
Yeah.
I have to pause and reflect for a moment now. Holy God. Whew, there we go. Okay, I'm good. So just so you know, we're at 27.5 minutes now.
All right. Well, I just wanted to throw one more out there before Russ takes off if he has to. Cafe Calabash.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was great. That was the basement place in Kensington, right?
Right, yeah. And
yeah.
That might have been one of the first times that I heard you, would have been there, maybe.
Was that kind of back when Paul Schuchuk was playing and stuff in town?
That was playing the bass, that's right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, he was a great musician. I think he's in Florida now or something. I haven't spoken to Paul for a number of years, but
yeah, he's in Florida.
Follow him on
Facebook. Yeah. It's funny, there's one thing I remember about that gig that wasn't that positive, and that's that at that time I was kind of working on my sound and trying to, develop something that was unique, and I had this crazy idea that using 2 Fender twin reverbs would be a really good idea on a gig, and they both weigh about 80 pounds each minimum. And Cafe Calabash was down a few flights of stairs. And I remember taking those amps down a few times, and then I think after doing that for a few weeks, I sold them both. Got something lighter. It's like, I'm not going to get any older if I have to keep carrying these 200 pounds worth of amplifiers down for a Saturday or Sunday afternoon jam. Like, what am I thinking?
And there's 3 musical stories that stick in my mind. 2 of them involve you, with often quoting Jean-Pierre from that Miles Davis recording.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other one was that down, 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 which is a Baroque theme, I think. And you would toss those into various places.
That's the Masterpiece Theater theme, isn't it? The Prince of Denmark's
March.
March.
I mean, all those things were inspired by Willie Jewson, because you remember Willie used to go to video arcades with a little like handheld recorder and record video game themes. And you'd be doing a gig with him, and he'd be playing Giant Steps or something, and all of a sudden he's playing level 3 of Pac-Man over the Giant Steps chain.
Well, do you
such
remember?
an incredible musician.
Remember when you played on my first album at the beach in 1997?
Yeah, yeah.
And we did Greg, your arrangement of Freddie Hubbard's what's the one that oh, Dear John. And Willie was busy trying to superimpose In the Mood over Giant Steps changes. Remember that? He was in there with the grand, and then he referenced it in his solo on the recording. So he was doing that kind of stuff all the time.
The guy's unbelievable.
I'm going to have to go listen to that.
Yes. I'm sure it's on that cut on Willie's solo.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
guy's
very
like
beginning
this
goes,
weird combination of,
yeah,
he's like this perfect combination of Jacob Collier and Homer Simpson. Because Willie's playing, it's like there's so much depth and knowledge to it, but then he has this levity and this sense of humor. That's, yeah, man, there's some great musicians back in the day. And I remember actually in Cafe Calabash playing a lot with George Phillip too, Jimmy Carver and those guys. And just
Jimmy
incredible.
Payne, Shufflefield. Oh my God.
Jimmy Payne, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And George Taylor, man. Holy cow. That guy had the best right hand I've ever heard on a guitar player. Learned so much playing with those guys.
Yeah. And that's why I recorded 2 of his tunes.
Yeah.
Of which you saw I just released one of them onto my spot. Check it out on Spotify and Google Play, and et cetera, et cetera. Keep those nano payments going.
Yeah. Awesome.
She Don't Want to Be Your Baby Anymore. That's it.
Yeah.
And the one last thing that I remember, Russ, is that just popped into my head for some strange reason, is a request to play the B-side from Nick Cave's first album.
Yeah. So after Greg took me to Switzerland and all that, I moved to Montreal for a few years with a bunch of people that were going to study music. You remember Dave Watts, the bass player? He was there, and Dustin Lindensmith, the sax player, Chris Orr, the bass player, who's now a lawyer, I think, and Todd Johnson, who was a keyboard player. Kind of a bunch of us went out there, and then because I wasn't going to school and didn't have any interest to at that point, I ended up touring with this kind of punk rockabilly band called Jerry and the Sons of Rhythm Orchestra, which was great. And it was $200 a week and all the pride you can eat for a couple years. But we would tour all over North America because they had a record deal in Canada and the States. And we were playing in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at this wacky little bar. And a guy came up and said, "Can you please play side 1 of Nick Cave's first album?" And the only response you could say was, no. Because we can't. And I also remember that night, it was the first time I ever drank Jägermeister, which is a mistake. And the 2 of the bar staff got in a fist fight. And this woman that was running the bar, she was really nice, but then once she had a few drinks in her, she wasn't. And she beat the shit out of the other guy who was the bartender. And then I ended up getting a tour of Albuquerque in a shopping cart from 2 women that were at the show. One of them, who was actually quite interesting because she was a biologist who had a hand in discovering the hantavirus.
Really? Wow.
I know. Well,
wow.
You know, like you can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't.
But,
I don't even think you could script it like that. You know?
But the Nick Cave story, yeah, that was from that gig, and it was a trip. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
The glamour.
There you go. There's always stories. Always stories.
Totally.
Cool.
I remember hanging out with you in Montreal.
Sorry?
I remember hanging out with you in Montreal.
Yeah. It was fun. And, you know, our buddy Dave Pierce, he was down in Boston at the time, and he came up for a few days too. It's kind of weird how we all kind of, you know, cycle back and come in and out of each other's lives and stuff. It's crazy. Yeah.
And speaking of Dave Pierce and some Stampede references, I posted a bunch of stories of mine on Facebook during the pandemic. And one of them that people liked the most and got the most mileage of was that night that you were supposed to play with Wally Eastwood, and your guitar pack was, they left it on overnight.
The juggler.
And Sam Lafia sent me down on Barry sax. I'm just like, oh man, what? So, anyway, but
yeah, because we had to do that. It was like the exchange from Deliverance, which
it's the dueling banjos.
Yeah, it's perfect for Stampede, I guess. I don't know.
I guess so.
Yeah, and I had to go down in a pink tuxedo jacket and a glitter hat and do
Showbiz,
that
baby. Showbiz.
and yeah, and my pack wouldn't work because that was like the early days of wireless stuff.
And they left it on overnight or something. They didn't plug it in.
Yeah, it
So
wasn't
Sam,
me.
Yeah, Sam Litfield looks at me and goes, "Pack, go down there." And I'm like, "Yeah, he's just screwing with me." So I started telling jokes with Billy Smith or something in the corner. And I turn, I look, and Sam's still looking at me. He goes, "Why are you still here?" I said, "You're serious?" He said, "Yeah, I am. Go down there." I said, "Oh my God, you want Barry sax on dueling banjos? Really?" I said, "Yes, get down there." So I went down. And anyway.
Yeah, you got more laughs than I ever did. But
And he gave me $40 cash when I came back up. So, whatever. That's all right. Yeah.
The glamorous.
Yep, showbiz. Anyway, that's all I got. I'm going to shut up. We're 35 minutes, so
Cool.
Yeah. If there's anything else to add, anybody, or any comments, or
No, I'm just happy to see you, Russ. It's good to see you.
It's good to hang for 35 minutes.
Even though we're spread out, but it's good to hang out and get caught up.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are safe and healthy. It's good. It's good to see.
Likewise.
Yeah, likewise, man.
Yeah. Regards to Jann next time you talk to her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I'll see her next week.
Cool. Tell her thanks again. Tell her thanks again for Uncover Me.
Sure. I will.
Much appreciated.
You bet.
All right.
That says to say thanks for uncovering me.
Yeah, really.
I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that part. So.
Yeah. La 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 la. All right. I'm signing off. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Okay.